Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Parsha Talk. I'm Avi Grossman, and I'm very happy to introduce to you Mr. Aryeh Eisenberg, the founder of Bonim B'Yachad and Edu-Together, or as I like to say, the guy who basically invented learning via Zoom. He might have, I
If
think he
only.
invented Zoom. He's certainly the one who introduced me to Zoom, and it's because of him I actually have it installed on my computer. So I'm going to credit him with that. Maybe someone could correct me. We'll begin and explain why it is that Aryeh has become a little bit of a celebrity or a pioneer, especially this year. We're reading about the stages leading up to the Exodus in this week's Parsha. The Exodus will actually feature in next week's Parsha, but before that had to happen, God had to smite the Egyptians quite a few times because Pharaoh had his hard-hearted, would not let his people go. And we have a commandment in the Torah next week that when Passover rolls around, wait, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Okay, I don't know why that should be. I'll try to fix that. When Passover rolls around, we have quite a few commandments to keep that first night of Passover. Of course, I've been trying to advocate and remind people that there's supposed to be a Korban Pesach that you're supposed to eat. You're not just supposed to eat matzah and maror. And we know the sages told us you have to drink the 4 cups of wine. One of the essential commandments is to relate the story of the Exodus. And Chazal call that Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. The word Sipur is a noun that sometimes refers to a story, but it also is referring to the act of telling the story. Yet, we refer to that text that we use the night of the Seder. Haggadah Pesach, by the way, its English edition will be coming out sometime later this month, so keep your eyes open for that announcement. It's all still available. The Hebrew edition is available for those who can contact me after this. It's called the Haggadah, and Haggadah means telling over. It is almost a synonym with Sipur. We look at the word Haggadah, though, it is slightly different than Sipur. Sipur means relating something. Haggadah has an added element. If you look in the word Haggadah, you see that there's supposed to be a dot in that gimel. That gimel is right after the hey with the patach. And when I transliterate that word, I spell it with 2 G's to emphasize the fact that there's actually a dot in the gimel. And that dot in the gimel is there to compensate for something. What is it there to compensate for? A lot of roots in Hebrew have a silent first letter in certain conjugations. It so happens that the root of the word Haggadah is nun gimel daled. The word nun does not occur in this particular conjugation. So we add a dot in the gimel to geminate, or double the gimel to make up for the missing nun. Neged means opposite. Haggadah means that you have to tell the story to your son sitting face to face with him. You can't just relate something. L'saper sometimes you could even do in writing, because I'll talk about testimony in court could be written down into a document and signed, an affidavit, but they call all sorts of shtarot, documents. But Haggadah requires that face-to-face interaction. Zoom learning, as most people are familiar with now, of course, has that added benefit of being face-to-face. I recall taking a certain type of online course in graduate school here in Israel, and I was quite surprised because after Aryeh introduced me to his online courses with Zoom, I actually had to take these courses. They called them online courses, basically a correspondence course, but instead of doing it in a mail like you used to do, you basically use your computer. But I never met these professors. I don't even know if they're real people. They might as well have been robots. I never met my classmates. I don't think I even interact with them. Just read this, write something, do the homework, take the final, write a paper at the end. There was nothing involved. I don't even know how did they even know I was even faking there. I don't know if the professor was real. I don't know if the other students were real. They don't know if I was a bot. And that was kind of a problem. So I and many others have to thank Aryeh. First of all, he's also been a very proud patriot, a patriot of Israel for creating this system, and also for, of course, hiring a lot of our fellow Olim. Thank you very much, and introducing us to a system that allows the face-to-face study to continue even in a little bit of a less desirable circumstances, especially in the light of COVID. Aryeh, tell us, how did this start? What's your background? What is Bonim B'Yachad? How did it all begin?
So, Rabbi Avi, first of all, thank you so much for having me this evening. It's great to be here, and I know we've been talking about this for a while, and it's great that our schedules finally clicked. So it's great to be able to talk with you. So, Bonim B'Yachad actually was something I started about 9.5 years ago. We made Aliyah about 12 years ago from New Jersey to Modi'in, where I still live with my wife, my two children. And at the time, I was a career teacher. I spent most of my career before making Aliyah working with Jewish day schools in both Baltimore and New Jersey. I was really one of the early people into the field of educational technology. If you look today at most Jewish day schools, there are ed tech people, technology people on staff, but this is back in 2000, 2001. It was really just getting off the ground. This whole idea that technology and education actually could come together to do great things. And I was very fortunate to work at a school in Baltimore called Beth Tefillah, which is still around, a great school. And Beth Tefillah was one of the early schools to really adopt this idea of technology integration within the educational framework. And from there, I was able to go to a couple of other schools to really help them to create their technology visions. And to make a long story short, when I came to Israel, I really wanted to stay in my field, like most Olim do. It's very easy to say I'll go do something else. I'll go into customer service or whatever. But I really wanted to stay in education. But I had to get a little creative, as many Olim do, and how to do that. And to make basically Bonim B'Yachad was my way of being able to combine the growing number of teachers like myself who had come on Aliyah and who were really struggling to find themselves professionally, while at the same time being able to help the schools in the United States that I knew were also having issues with teacher shortages and being able to provide the services they needed to with ever shrinking budgets and other limitations. So really, that's how Bonim B'Yachad started. We started in January of 2002, I want to say. 2000. What are we in now? I can't even remember. See, 2000. Yeah, something like that. It's been about nine and a half years. So was in 2002. Sorry, we came in 2008, so we're talking like 2012. And we started our first year with 3 schools. And by the end of our first year, I remember we were working in 11 schools. And at that time, I came and I told my wife, God bless her, when I told her I came home with this crazy idea, I said, I want to start my own business in Israel. And my wife looked at me and said, are you crazy? Like I just found a job with a high-tech company doing training work, and things had finally settled down. And I said to her, listen, if it doesn't work after 6 months, I'll go find another job. I'll go back into high tech, but this is something I have to do for myself. So my wife said, she was very supportive. She said, go do it, see what happens. And I remember the best moment was, I think 3-4 months after I started, where I went to my company that I was working for and I said, I quit. I said, I'm doing this full time. And that's been as they say, we haven't looked back, and Baruch Hashem, we've continued to grow.
Now, most of us are familiar with using Zoom. Have you always used Zoom?
So actually, no. Back when we started, Zoom was really either just getting off the ground or may not have even been around. We actually started in a platform called WebEx, which some of you out there may still be familiar with. They are still around. And WebEx served its purpose. It helped to get us started. But one of the things we found, and certainly as an ed tech person, this is something that I've been dealing with my entire professional career, we wanted to make things as easy as we possibly could on the user side. It's one thing for the teachers on our end to have to be trained, and we still do a lot of training with our teachers, both in technology and in pedagogy and how to teach online. But on the user side, for the students, we really wanted something that was simple, easy, one click, and they were done. And really, when Zoom really came into the marketplace, we were actually one of the first, not one of the first, I won't say first, but one of the early adapters of Zoom. We were using Zoom before anybody knew what Zoom was. Yes, Avi, and like you said before, I missed my opportunity to buy that stock. Who knew? But Zoom, even though we were still a very small company, they really did go out of their way. I remember back 7-8 years ago when we started with Zoom, they really were very open to working with us and helping us to really make sure that it was what we needed. So thank God it's really been it was an easy transition from WebEx to Zoom, and we've been in Zoom ever since.
One of the, if I may say so, I don't want to say that there's problems with this type of system, but one of the things I encountered that sometimes interfered with my performance was that the internet's suddenly out, or there's a bad internet connection, and suddenly you get that, you know, and then and now I've seen it a few parody videos of students doing that to their teachers. They because that Zoom is the regular thing. I think my daughter is a freshman in high school. She's been to school a total of 6 days this year. The rest
That
has been
much?
online. Well,
That much?
not
So,
that much. I don't know. I actually think she has friends who were in dorm schools, so they got trapped in school. So they
oh
actually
my.
in school. So I tell my daughter, you should be very happy. When I was her age, I had to go to school, you know. And nowadays they've basically been on almost a year-long vacation, and they started even before everybody else. But that's a more personal matter. Uh, I've seen it. The parody is the student, let's say the junior high schooler logs into Zoom and says, good morning, teacher, and then pretends that they're having interference or just pulls the plug on the modem or whatever it is. Back in the day, I don't think the students were doing that to me necessarily. But how much of that have you seen, or the students trying to mess with the technology and trying to class, or
So,
what? Or, yeah,
oh, sorry,
I'll let you
sorry. Go ahead.
get the next one. No, I have a follow-up question after that.
Okay. So, it's interesting because when we started this 9.5 years ago, many of our schools or learning partners really didn't have great internet. Or we would have schools that said, oh, we don't have computers in the building. We have to go out and figure out a solution. And our kind of philosophy from the day one was that we don't want a school to have to go out and purchase anything to use our platform. In other words, if a school comes to us for a certain course, we're going to figure out how to do it with what they already have, at least for the most part. Now, the one thing we have to insist on is a good internet connection. That's you can't do Zoom without the internet. And by the way, we've had a couple schools ask, is there a way to do this without internet? And unfortunately, we can't do that. But what I will say is, from a technology standpoint, that it's gotten a lot better in the last, even before COVID, in the last 4 or 5 years. When schools come to us now, we don't have the same worries. Do you have internet? Do you have computers? There's still fine tunings that need to be done, but the schools are a lot further along than they were when we started, and that's something that I'm very happy to say. On the student side, one of the things we do with all of our teachers, and any of our teachers can attest to this, we really provide our teachers with, like I said before, with two types of training. Obviously, there's the training on how to use the tech tools, things like Zoom and Google tools and Padlet and all the other wonderful tools that we bring in. But we also teach our teachers how to become successful online educators. And part of that is realizing that we are dealing with a student population. As I said to one principal the other week, we don't expect seventh graders or ninth graders to sit there for 45 minutes, smiling and doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We can all think back to when we were that age, and we have to be realistic. But part of being a good online teacher is really making sure your class is engaging, making sure that you're using the tools properly, making sure that you know the warning signs, because, like you said, kids like to test the waters, kids like to try things. And the question is, do we give them the opportunity to do it again? If they see that after the first time that, the teacher doesn't make a big deal, okay, that's nice, let's come back and do the assignment. It kind of, picture the balloon kind of, deflating a little bit when the kid realizes, he's not having the effect he wants. And I'll tell you, I have two children who are in school in here in Modi'in, in middle school and high school. And it was very frustrating for me as a parent, especially with what I do for a living, as you said before, Avi, to see the experience, at least at the beginning, that my kids were having in their Zoom classes. I'm very proud of my then 12-year-old son, who actually got fed up with one of his teachers and in a very polite way gave that teacher a Zoom tutorial. And I said to him, how did you know what to do? And he said, I've been hearing you do this for 8 years. And his teacher actually was very appreciative, because then she found out that, hey, she could mute the students, she could remove different privileges and so on and so forth. But what that really shows me is the importance of making sure that the teachers are prepared. One thing, teachers around the world have been forced to change their methodologies and the way they teach overnight, and it's not fair. It's a challenge. Find me another profession where people woke up one morning and said, okay, we're not going to do it this way anymore. The way you've been doing it for 20 years, that's over. We're going to do it this way. But, what the schools that have been more successful, and we've done training for schools all over the world and for teachers all over the world, those teachers that have been the most successful are the ones that have been supported with proper training. And that I can say with certainty.
Okay, so now I have some serious questions. Basically, there's an arms race between the faculty and the students. Students are always trying to come up with, I don't know, ways, unfortunately, perhaps to cheat or to share homework, all sorts of ways to get out of doing work, unfortunately, but that's just human nature. And have you noticed this arms race going on in Zoom? Or I'll be more specific. Have you seen students come up with something really clever to sort of get out of class or get out doing their work that you guys only were figured out a little bit too late? Or has that happened yet?
So look, like I said before, students are students. They're going to try to see what they can get away with. That's what students often do. One of the things that I've kept teaching teachers and sessions that I've given and sessions that I've written is that the idea of assessing our students does not need to be limited to the standard multiple choice or short answer exam that many of us as students remember taking for every subject, whether it be math
Yeah.
or Gemara or history or whatever. We have to be, as teachers, we have to be a little bit more creative than that, because when it comes to academic honesty, when it comes to integrity, these are more illegitimate concerns than they were maybe in a standard classroom. But again, I think this really all goes back to the way teachers are trained and the support that they're given. I was in one school, and when I brought up the idea of a teacher doing a project-based assessment for a specific subject, she looked at me and said that, well, that's a wonderful idea, but I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to create Google what, and I felt really badly for this teacher, because she had already been teaching online at that point for probably 6 months, and nobody had ever showed her what a Google form was, which in our world is one of the most basic tools that we can use, and they're certainly more advanced and more complex tools. But again, I think it all has to go back. I will share one funny story with you. A school came to me and said, the students, we gave them a multiple choice exam, standard exam, whatever it was, online, and we think the students may have cheated. So they said to me, can you take a look? And I didn't know the students at all. I said, listen, I'll look. I don't know what I'm going to find. And sure enough, like, every student got like a 98 or something like that. So I had a thought. I said, how do I know? I don't know these kids. I said, can I see their grades up until this point? So the school said, sure. And they sent me the grades. So I found there was one student who had a consistent 78, 79 average. Somehow he got a 98. So I said to the school, I said, listen, they would have gotten away with it, but they got too greedy. I said, if that kid had settled for an 83 and 84, I wouldn't have been the wiser. But that kid was asking for too much. And sure enough, like, they actually confronted the kid and said, like, come on, like, did you really get a 98 here? And the kid basically folded and said, like, yeah, I got greedy. So but really, in all seriousness, it's about, we have to, as teachers, we have to be a little bit more creative. We have to be a little bit more open as to how we're going to judge the way our students are performing. And it might be through projects. It might be through oral assessments. It might be through other things. It really depends on the subject and the grade level and the abilities, the capabilities of the school or the students. But we have to think a little bit broader than we may have at this point last year.
Now I'm going to give a proposition. You tell me if you agree or disagree and why. I remember hearing here in Israel, I had some quite large classes, especially in 8th grade. They could get up to maybe not 30 students, but it was well over 20. You could recognize it. And on a good day, you could actually deal with a class of that size. But then I noticed on a Bonim B'Yachad or an Edu-Together type of class, they're significantly smaller. Do you think that that the limit of a Zoom class size, let's say from 7th to 11th grade, has an upper limit that's below the upper limit of the class size of a actual class?
Look, we get requests all the time from schools who, come to us and say, we have a class of 28 kids. Can we put them together? Our rule is generally we aim for a maximum class size of an online class of around 15 students. Now, obviously, if a school has 16 or 17, we're not going to go make them split it up, but we see that, to be able for the teacher to really be able to individualize the experience for the student, to be able to track his progress, deal with the discipline issues that might come up, what have you, that's kind of the max that we suggest. But that's not to say that more students can't be successful. I think it really depends on the teacher, and that's number one. And the second category I think it depends on is the support and the partnership between our teacher and our partner school. And I'll explain what I mean. From the teacher side, we have teachers on our staff who, when we get a class of 16, 17 students, I know that they're the bright people. They are teachers who are just comfortable with managing the large number of students. They can multitask. It's just their comfort zone. And I have other teachers on our staff who really do much better with 5 students or 2 students or even 1 student. So I think that doesn't make one person a better teacher than the other. We all have our strengths, and part of our job as administrators is making sure we're playing to the strength of our faculty. On the other side, though, we really do look at our partner schools for their support. Before we start a new course, we try to get everything we can about the students. Do any students have learning issues? Are there strategies that have worked with them in the past? What's your behavior policy? Is there going to be a proctor in the room, to help support? These are all things that go in. When schools call us up, we have a minimum 2-week window before we start the new course. So if you call me today and say, I need a math course, it's probably not going to start until February 1 at the earliest, because during those 2 weeks, what we really try to do is get to know the students, get to know the school, make sure that we assign the right teacher to the right group, and really try to go in from day one with all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted, as the expression goes. We really want it to be successful on all sides.
Now, when I was a student in high school, they were expecting us to be there, I think, for davening, that's the prayers, well before 8 or around 8 o'clock. And we would start our Talmud study at 9, and we'd be in the classroom with the rabbi well after noon. We'd have a lunch break, and then we'd have to take courses once again. They did Navi. Navi was considered, studying the prophets was considered something to do in the afternoon, not during the holy morning. And then we had, of course, history and math and English and the rest, and we had to take a Regents science, and we had a full schedule basically until 6 p.m. Now, I was I took AP Bio back then. I remember in 11th grade, and eventually through Bonim B'Yachad, I became the AP Bio teacher for a few years, and that was kind of fun. And they reminded me of me. And basically, I had these gentlemen for 50 minutes a day, just like I used to sit in biology class for 50 minutes a day. Have you seen if there's an upper limit to how many Zoom classes a student can have? But even before I get that, perhaps I'm assuming too much. The model that we were used to in the Jewish day schools in and around the New York area assume that these students could go hour after hour of sitting in the classroom, and that was normal, and they should be capable of surviving that. What have you learned about how long a student can actually sit through class after class? And have you seen, perhaps, I was just guessing that too much sitting in front of the computer type of classes in one day is too much, and it cannot actually compensate for a whole day of school, perhaps. What do you think?
So we actually, I'm not going to say we learned this in the last 6 months, because the topic you're bringing up is actually something we've really been very vocal about since we opened. There is that, now it's called Zoom fatigue. I think that's been the coined term, but this idea of too much online time really did exist even pre-COVID, and that's something important to remember. Look, we have, in addition to the work we do with schools, this past year we opened up Edu-Together Academy, which is a fully functional private virtual high school. We work with a lot of private students who come to us, for different reasons, who prefer to learn outside of the school building or at home. And one of the rules we have for our private students is that they cannot be online from, our school day goes from 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time until about 4:30 Eastern time, and we try not to give our students more than 3, maybe 4 live sessions per day, because, like you said, we can't expect a student to sit there for 8 or 9 hours, just going from one Zoom class to the next. So we break their schedules up so they have independent learning time, they have project-based learning time. That's not on Zoom, and that's something I think that is critical to what we do. I think on the school side, I think it is something that they have to be careful of also. And I know a lot of schools, since they went online because of COVID, there have been a lot of schedule adjustments. And a lot of times our schools that we are working with already will come to me or come to our team, and they'll ask for our opinion, or what do we prioritize? How do we do this? And there's no right answer, but I do think that the idea of Zoom fatigue is a real concern, and I do think that we have to make sure that our kids are not sitting online for 8 or 9 hours a day. That's for sure.
One of the things I was thinking was, I seeing from my own experience, and after being in the high school, being on this side of the chalkboard. Hey, we don't use chalkboards anymore. We use
What's
whiteboards.
chalk? Right.
Yeah. So, and I don't even have a chalkboard here. This is an our room. I was on one side of the teacher's desk, and I ended up on the other side. I realized perhaps even long days of school are not good. I think ideally I would have done it, 1 or 2 hours of frontal instruction, maybe 1 or 2 hours of Zoom, but that's it. You give kids more time, if they can do a lot better on their own. But that's just my opinion. So you said about the hours that you're teaching. I guess that basically precludes you teaching in Australia and in New Zealand. You don't offer
You
anything there.
you would think, but we've
Yeah.
actually worked with schools in Australia, because the time wise, what ends up happening is in Israel, the courses happen at like 5:30, 6 a.m.
Mhm.
In the morning. So it's kind of like funny, because we'll say to the students, like, have a good day. And they'll be like, wait a second, it's the end of we have all the time
Yeah.
jokes. We've actually worked with schools in Australia a couple of times, either early in the morning here, or sometimes on occasion we'll have, I remember one time when we did it, one of our teachers, we actually had a teacher who was based in Seattle, Washington, in the States. So for him on Pacific Standard Time, it wasn't that big of a deal time wise. So we usually find a way to make these things work. We've never had a case where we haven't been able to work with a student or a school because of a time issue. Luckily we have a wonderful staff of faculty, of educators, and we have some insomniacs, which helps. Something I have people who really don't mind teaching at 6 a.m. or at 1 a.m. in the morning, whatever the case might be. Avi, you looks like you froze a little bit there. Avi, are you still there? So yeah, this is what can happen sometimes during an online class. We hope that this doesn't happen during a session if people are still out there watching, but we're ready for anything. Hi, Avi. All right. Well, I'm for those of you still listening. Rabbi Grossman had a power outage, and while we're waiting for him to connect, I can just say that one of the things we've really been able to do here with Edu-Together is we've really been able to bring a lot of possibilities to schools and students where the resources just don't exist, and that's something we've been really proud of. We've been able to bring Judaic studies and Hebrew programs to schools. In a lot of different places. We've been able to really work with teachers in training and professional development. And it's really something that brings us a lot of joy after 9 years to see the thousands of students that have really benefited from this idea of online learning. And obviously now with COVID, it's not a new idea to anybody. Everybody knows what online learning is. But, even now that it's been thrust into the center, we still want to make sure that what we're doing is being done the right way, and is really being done to help our students, because that's really what it's all about. I don't know if everybody, you're on speaker. I don't know if the group can hear Avi. I'm actually wearing a headset right now, but Avi is Rabbi Avi is unfortunately kicked offline temporarily. But let me just ask you, Rabbi Avi, do you want me to stay on until you get back, or should we? Okay, I'm just going to repeat what you said just in case. This is a little funny. Rabbi Grossman just wanted to thank me, so thank you. You're very welcome. And Rabbi Avi, I want to thank you for having me. And you know, if you are familiar with a school or a student that we can help, everything that Edu-Together does is really built to meet the needs of each school and each group of students. We offer all subjects: Judaic, Hebrew, math, science, AP courses, college credit courses, really everything from 3rd grade all the way through 12th grade. Please visit our website at www.edu-together.org. And if we are also always looking for great educators, so if you are based here in Israel or in the US or anywhere else for that matter, and you think you would make a great online teacher, please feel free to send us your resume anytime. Jobs, JOBS, at edutogether.org. And I want to just conclude by thanking Rabbi Avi, thanking all of you who are with us this evening or this morning, depending on where you are for listening. And Rabbi Avi, I'm sorry we didn't get to see each other face to face, or at least virtually face to face, but really, Toda Rabbah, thank you so much for having me as your guest. And I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and continued health. Thank you so much.